And what was interesting, you know, the universe, the flow of life tends to guide you into areas that say a big hint, you're on the right lines, darling. I came back from Credo Mutwa, and I was in South Africa staying at this home in Johannesburg, where organising my talks. And I'm writing this book, Biggest Secret at the moment, so I've got this laptop thing around, and I just sat there and I put into the computer the very little bit, some of the stuff that he'd said. Then I shut it down, went downstairs, sat down, there's no one around, but the telly's on, someone's left the telly on. This is about an hour after I've left the guy. And a program starts to come on, and it's a film. And I thought, I'll give this a look, a bit of chewing gum for the mind, you know, see what's coming on. What was it? It was a film called The Arrival, about an extraterrestrial race that had taken over the planet and no one realized it because they look like you and me. So, when you then add what this guy and other people have said to me in the modern world, yeah, they look like you and me and all that stuff, you start to think, hold a minute. Is there a common theme of control on this planet that can be charting all the way through this? And this is where we move on from this area now, because one of the things these texts say, and other texts say around the world, and accounts and legends and stuff, is that the gods interbred with humans, creating a hybrid race, which the Egyptians used to call the demigods, and that after a time, particularly in the last 2 millennium BC, these gods, who are not great in number, this is the important point, they started operating more behind the scenes and created bloodlines, royal and priestly bloodlines, that were the middlemen running and controlling the situation of humanity on their behalf. And it was interesting, you know, something occurred to me when I was doing this research, and somebody said something to me 4 or 5 years ago. Only just pennies started to drop to how this fits in. I met this guy in England who worked for the British Home Office in the 60s. And he said, oh, something you might be interested in. He said, when I was working for the Home Office in the 60s, he said, I was involved in a project which has never been published, interviewing people who claim to have had interaction and communication with extraterrestrial life. Oh, why? He said, yeah, he said, we did it. We did about 1,800 interviews. And he said the Russians, the Japanese, the Americans, the Scandinavians were doing the same. And after a while, he said, we pulled our findings, and we had about 62,000 interviews. And we were looking for correlations and common themes. He said, we got rid of about 20% because they were bloody off the wall. We thought they were. And I said, well, what were any themes that came through? He said, well, one of them was this. He said, we were told that a race, that these people have been told by various interactions that a race of extraterrestrials had come to the planet in the ancient world, that they were basically tall, white, blue-eyed, and that they had become the gods of ancient Sumer. And that these had broken up into 2 streams. One, those that had interbred with humanity, and by now you wouldn't see the difference between them and humanity. And there was the other group that had retained its genetic purity, and these things that these people were told lived under the ground. And again, another common theme all over the world is the theme of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, highly advanced people who live within the earth. Now, like I say, it's like researching in mirrors on a quicksand floor, so I'm just putting this out as information, but there are themes starting to become very clear. And so, I started to look at if it was possible to pick up any bloodlines in the ancient world that could be brought through to today, that could be this stream of what we call hybrids or whatever. And I started over the last year to realize that yes, that can certainly be done. What happened? 2 things. These bloodlines, we'll pick these up as we go along at the relevant point, these priestly and royal bloodlines, they became the pharaohs, they became the kings, they became the rulers. This is where we get the term divine right of kings. Ruling on behalf of not God, but the gods. And what I think we've done, the more I look at this, is become mixed up, and we've been encouraged to become mixed up between two things. God, for want of a term, that is everything that exists, including us, the consciousness that is everything, and the gods, which were extraterrestrials. And of course they call them gods. In the 1930s, there was a group of American and Australian airmen who landed in a primitive area of New Guinea in an aeroplane which the tribespeople had never seen. These guys started a religion. They thought the gods had arrived. They'd never seen anything like it. They had to be gods. They were just airmen in a plane. So you can see where all this kind of came from. And this is why we have this contradiction in parts of the Bible, particularly in the New Testament, of a loving God, and in the Old Testament, a series of versions of God who just want, kind of blood and sacrifice and gore, don't they? Because that's not God. Of course there's a contradiction, because it's not God we're talking about there. And so, the other thing that happened, alongside these bloodlines, was a structure started to be set up, and again you could show this right back in the ancient world, of mystery schools and secret societies, which created a structure in which knowledge, advanced knowledge, coming from this advanced race, or races more like, there's a number of them, not just the blondes, which has been passed on at the top level of these secret society mystery school network through initiation to the chosen few. And as can be shown, and I do it in great detail in this book I'm working on, the same force set up institutions in the public arena, religions, politics, etc., to suck that knowledge out of circulation. So therefore, the knowledge, the true knowledge of where we've come from, who we are, and the nature of possibility, has been sucked out of circulation and held in fewer and fewer hands. What happened? Every time this force, under different names, the British Empire, whatever, Spanish Empire, went into a native country, when the Spanish went into Central America, the Spanish into South America, the British into North America, the British into Australia and Africa, what did they do every time? They destroyed the native knowledge, they destroyed the books, they destroyed the accounts, they killed the people that held the native oral traditions. In other words, they wanted to create a year zero where we went into limbo land in terms of knowledge of who we are, where we come from. And what have we reached in the modern world today? It's a sobering thought. 5 billion people on this planet, apparently. The overwhelming vast majority today, tonight, have no idea who they are. They've no idea about the nature of life. They've no idea where they came from. They've no idea where they're going. They are living their life in a complete vacuum of knowledge and understanding of even who they are. What are we doing here? Because this vacuum has been created, but this advanced knowledge has been passed on through the secret society network. Now, one of the areas of knowledge that has been held there and kept out here has been this: the knowledge of the true nature and power and influence of the sun. What you're looking at there is a sunspot. Some of these sunspots are about 100,000 miles high, and they're when the sun emits extremely powerful magnetic energy which comes through the solar system on the solar wind, and at its most powerful it can take out computer systems and power supplies. There has always been two levels of knowledge, often in the same piece of writing. What has happened is religious texts, including the Bible, have been written so that the initiate of the knowledge would read them in a certain way, read the numerology, read the esoteric language and symbolism, and the public then take them literally, and a religion comes out of it. In the same way, in the ancient world, you had the people at the top who understood the true nature of the sun, and its influence and power and how you could use it. And you had the rest of the population who worshipped it as a flipping god. Same thing. So there was a guy called Maurice Cottrell who was a kind of scientific researcher. And earlier on in his life, he researched very much into sunspot activity. He became very interested in it. And he worked out cycles of emissions of magnetic energy from the sun. First of all, he realized that within these cycles, you could chart the rise and fall of civilizations and great changes on the Earth. If you know what those flows do, then you can make sure if you want to make something happen, you do it at that time, because it's going to go with this flow of energy and have a great chance of success. This is why this elite today, right to the present day, never have a meeting or never have an event or anything, announce anything or do anything that it doesn't fit the esoteric, astrological situation that would give it the best chance of success. This is why you have certain years, like 1933, 1963, when incredible amounts of things happen in the same year. So what Cottrell found and did was he charted these cycles of sunspot activity, emissions of energy from the sun, small cycles, medium cycles, big cycles. Later on in his life, he came across the Maya knowledge, information that was left by the Maya in Central America, and they got it from previous peoples, and eventually I would say you go back to this same extraterrestrial interaction, not necessarily with the same ones, man. And what staggered him was that the cycles of human evolution, small cycles, medium cycles, great cycles, which the Maya talked about, were even over the great cycles within a few years of Cottrell cycles of sunspot activity. In other words, the sun is seriously important if you understand its real effect on what happens on planet Earth. If you know that, and the mass of the people haven't got a clue, already you're in a very, very big position of power. And you can follow, therefore, this obsession with the sun among the elite of the ancient world. This is Akhenaten, but in Egypt, just an example. Very much, obviously, the Egyptian situation involved in the sun. And interestingly, what they say in the ancient accounts of Egypt is, first of all, Egypt was controlled by the gods, then by the demigods, and then eventually into the pharaohs. It takes the same situation that the Sumerians describe. Here you have the throne in Sri Lanka, again, sun. This is Roman, sun. And this is George Washington's chair. George Washington was a high-degree Freemason. A lot of the founding fathers were high-degree Freemasons. Of the 56 signatories on the American Declaration of Independence, 50 were known Freemasons, only one was known not to be. Now, we'll get into the Freemason stuff later, but that holds this knowledge at its highest expression. It's one of the secret societies at the peak of the pyramid that holds this knowledge from the ancient world. And this symbol, the rising sun, is one of the symbols of this global elite, which can be picked up again and again and again, and you'll see it emerge as we go through the night in transnational corporation logos, etc. Because they have a symbolic language which initiates understand, and the mass of the people think is just a symbol. What's that matter, you know? Because symbols of various kinds generate an energy, and they talk to the subconscious. I mean, even today's science realizes this now. So in advertising and what have you, and when they're trying to get over something and get us to think in a certain way, they'll put symbols out which are talking to the subconscious because they understand how it works. Again, this is Zoroaster. In the ancient world, the depiction of people like that with the halo and stuff very much is a symbol of the sun all the time. Could be other things as my research goes on, but certainly the sun god became an obsession.